Akhandamandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupaswarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Namah Pankajanabhaya Namah Pankajamaline Namah Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangraye Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Gobhramana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Sarvebhyo Namaha Sarvesham Krute Swagatam. Welcome to this session. So we are now doing a review of the first 3 chapters of Bhagavad-Gita. We began this in the last session. Today I will continue from where we have left last time. But before I take off from the new point, I will give you a quick recap of what we did last time, so that even those who have joined new today will be in touch with what I'm covering. So we began with this point that the first 3 chapters of Gita covers 162 shlokas out of 700. Slightly more than 20% of the Gita is covered in the first 3 chapters. And the first chapter begins with Arjuna's confusion. And then Sri Bhagavan begins to respond. His response mainly begins in the second chapter. So we divided the content of the first 3 chapters into 6 themes. The very first theme is the distinction between Atma and Anatma. The second is what I called Mahavairi. Sri Bhagavan uses the word Mahavairi, the great enemy, Kama and Krodha. The third theme has to do with Dharma. And we said broadly there are 2 types of Dharma, Samanya Dharma and Parodharma or Paradharma. Fourth theme is Karma Yoga. The fifth is Sthita Prajna and Loka Sangraha, 2 very important terms in Bhagavad Gita. And finally, the concept of Atma Sukha, which pervades the whole of Gita. Okay, so all these 6 themes are touched upon in the first 3 chapters of Gita, and they are also repeated later. But we will see how they are covered in the first 3 chapters, what is told about them. They're introduced here. Okay, so you can see that in the first 3 chapters, Bhakti is not a dominant theme. Bhakti actually becomes a dominant theme from the 7th chapter of Gita onwards. And we will touch upon Bhakti again when we come to that place. Now, today I will quickly review what we did in the last session. We touched upon the first 3 themes in the last session. I'll quickly do them, and then I'll go to the 4th one, which is Karma Yoga today. So the basic question is about the distinction between Atma and Anatma. Arjuna's confusion, Sri Krishna responds, he wants to clear the confusion. So he says the first thing you should know is this difference between consciousness and matter, or life and matter. The understanding is that every living being is an Atma, consciousness, which resides in the body. The living being is not the body itself. The living being is distinct from the body. Each of us is an Atma. There are 2 types of Atma, Jivatma and Paramatma. Jivatma is the individual living being. Each one of us is a Jivatma. Paramatma, supreme being, the supreme consciousness which pervades everything in existence. That is Paramatma. There is a distinction between Jivatma and Paramatma in the Bhagavad Gita. It's very clear. In many places, Sri Bhagavan distinguishes between them. It's not an imaginary distinction, it's a real distinction. We are the Jivatma, we are not the Paramatma. We will never become the Paramatma in future also. We will remain the Jivatma, but we can realize the Paramatma. We can realize ourselves, we can realize the Paramatma. But at the same time, even though there is a distinction between Jivatma and Paramatma, there is also abheda between them, non-distinction. There is similarity or oneness between them. Okay, this is a deep philosophical thing. And how this is so becomes more clear as we go through the Bhagavad Gita. Even now, when I distinguish between the 2, you will see the difference and the oneness coming between them. Now, each Atma, Jivatma as well as Paramatma, has innate knowledge. In Vedanta philosophy, actually, we say that not only does the Atma have knowledge, the Atma is knowledge. Atma is non-different from knowledge. Knowledge and the Atma are synonymous. Consciousness is also Atma. So Jnana, which is pure, Jnana, which is infinite, and Jnana, which is eternal, is part of the Atma, is the Atma. And this actually means that the Atma is entitled to and is capable of experiencing Sukha, happiness. Okay, so happiness, which is pure, which is infinite, and which is unending or eternal, which never stops, which is not subject to time, not subject to the time axis. It will always be the same and increasing. So this kind of happiness is something that we don't experience now in our present condition. Right? We don't experience that kind of happiness. Whereas the Gita says that Paramatma, Sri Bhagavan, always experiences that. Jivatma does not always experience it, right? For example, we experience some kind of happiness in this existence, but we don't experience this happiness, what we are describing here. So we will come to that. That's what the Gita is about. The Gita is a book of how do we experience that happiness. So awareness of one's true spiritual nature is jnana. Jnana means knowing, realizing, not just theoretically knowing. Theoretically, it's easy to accept it. But actually realizing and living by it, that is jnana. Realizing that we are the Atma, distinct from matter. We are not matter. We don't depend on matter. We don't need matter for our existence, for our happiness. We exist independent of matter. So this is jnana. So the distinction between the Atma and the Anatma is the very first thing that is taught in the Bhagavad-Gita. The first 20 shlokas that Sri Bhagavan speaks after Arjuna says that you please take over. From that point onwards, 11th shloka of the second chapter to the 30th shloka, 20 shlokas, Sri Bhagavan brings out this distinction, and we saw this last time. I have identified 8 dimensions of difference between them. Okay, and I've also indicated which shlokas say this, except for this dimension, which is actually present not in these 20 shlokas directly, but elsewhere in the Gita and everywhere in the Vedantic literature. But all the other 7, I've also given the specific shlokas in these first 20 shlokas, which points to this distinction between the Atma and the Anatma. The first is the property of Satta, the property of eternality. The Atma is Sat. It always exists. It has no non-existence. Whereas the Anatma has creation, destruction. It is not Sat. It is Asat, Asat Vastu. It is matter. So the body, whenever I say Anatma, I'm referring to anything that is matter, anything that can be described in terms of the material elements, like all that we see around us, our own body, our mind, our intelligence, our ego, ahankara, all of it is matter. The Atma is distinct from all of that. Okay, so whenever I say Anatma, we should keep that in mind. When I say Atma, you should think of something that is distinct from all of these things. Right? Okay. The second is Chetanata, the property of sentience or consciousness. Sentience is an English word referring to consciousness. Each one of us has consciousness, awareness, right? Both. The ability to cognize, consciousness. So the Atma is Sachetana. It has consciousness, it has knowledge, it is knowledge. Whereas matter has no consciousness. Matter is Achetana. The third property is the property of Vyaktatva, pervasion or pervasiveness. So the Atma is, Vyaktatva is not pervasion, I beg your pardon. That is Vyapti, that will come later. Vyaktatva is manifestation, being manifest, materially manifest. The Atma is Avyakta, means it has no material manifestation. The Atma does not become matter. The Atma is not constructed in terms of matter. The Atma is always distinct and never manifests materially. What we can only see is the body. We cannot see the Atma. Atma cannot be perceived, touched, etc. Right? It has no material manifestation. Whereas the body and all material elements are Vyakta. They can be perceived, they can be touched, they can be seen, etc. The fourth dimension is the dimension of Vikarita or mutability, transformability, can be transformed. Right? So the Atma is Avikari. The Atma does not change. The Atma always remains the same. It doesn't undergo any transformation. Only the body of the Atma, the body taken by the Atma, our body, for example, changes over time. When we are in this birth, when we come into this birth, we have a small baby body. or even before we have the baby body, we are in the form of an embryo in a small seed form, grows and becomes a baby, then becomes a child, becomes an adult, becomes an old man or old woman, dies. So this kind of change, the Atma does not undergo, right? So Vikarita. The fifth property is the property of Prameyatva or measurability. Okay, so measurability requires us to, know or use the concept of space or time. But space and time also are material. One of the elements of matter listed in the Bhagavad-Gita is Akasha, Kham. Right? Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayuhu Kham Mano Buddhirevacha. Kham means Akash, space. The space, what we call space, is actually a form of matter only. It is not Atma. But because the Atma is distinct from matter, the Atma has no correspondence with space. So the Atma is immeasurable, because any measurement we make is in terms of space or in terms of time. But these things don't apply to the Atma. So the Atma is aprameya. It has no measurability, whereas the Anatma is prameya. It has measurability. It's finite. In finite terms, you can measure it. Sixth property is the property of vyapti or pervasion. The Atma, both the Jivatma and the Paramatma, have the property of pervasion. For example, the Jivatma's consciousness pervades the body it occupies. So each one of us is conscious of our own bodies, respective bodies. The Paramatma is present everywhere, so he is conscious of every body. And not only every body, but everything in this universe. He pervades everything. His consciousness spreads everywhere. Whereas Anatma does not have any pervasion beyond itself. It is just there. It has no consciousness anyway, so it has no pervasion also. Then the property of Sthatritva. Sthatritva is immovability, stationarity. The Atma is stationary. It is achala. It is immovable. Whereas Anatma is movable because it's in space. The Atma beyond space, it has no mobility in space. It's always in the same place. And even place there cannot be understood in terms of how we understand space. Okay, so the Atma is described in the Gita as achala or sthanu. Sthanu, achala means immovable. And the eighth dimension is chintyatva, conceivability, whether we can comprehend it with our mind. Right? Now, the anatma, matter, obviously we can comprehend. We have comprehended and we have made theories about matter, how matter behaves in different ways, what you can do with it. Right? But the Atma, we can only talk about it theoretically. We can't conceive it. We can experience it. उसका अनुभव हो सकता है, पर वो चिंत्य वस्तु नहीं. We can experience the Atma, but you can't logically describe it. Right? We can talk about it like this, but it cannot be conceived in terms of the mind. It is inconceivable. It's incomprehensible. Right? It's called achintya. Yeah.
So mind is so material.
Mind is matter.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Mind is matter. Yes. Mind is a part of the body, linga sharira. So what the external body that we see now, made of flesh and bones and blood and everything, is called stula sharira. It's a gross body. Then beyond this is another body that we have, which is called the linga sharira or sukshma sharira. And that consists of mana, buddhi, ahankara, mind, intelligence, and the material ego. Okay. Okay, so along these 8 dimensions, Sri Bhagavan distinguishes. The number 8 is something that I have identified. In his presentation in the Gita, he just speaks 20 shlokas, one after the other. And across these 20 shlokas, these 8 dimensions emerge. So he makes it very clear that you are the Atma, you are not the Deha. And therefore, when you think of happiness and distress, happiness and misery, you must think keeping this in mind, keeping your nature as the Atma. So all the logic that Arjuna was giving about why he should not fight the war, why he wants to leave the battlefield and go away, now Krishna is trying to analyze this from this perspective. So all the rest of the arguments given in the Bhagavad-Gita, unless we understand this difference between Atma and Atma, we will not be able to really appreciate them. That is why this is given first. It's like the ABCD. Okay, from this, where do we go? We ask this question. The Paramatma continuously experiences innate knowledge and happiness. Then why is it that the Jivatma does not experience the same? Okay, at least the Jivatmas we see in the samsara don't experience. There may be other Jivatmas who experience it, but we don't experience it. Why is it so? And the answer that Sri Bhagavan gives is this. He says that there is a Mahavairi, a great enemy that we are attached to. We have become subservient, or we have come under the control of this enemy, which is known as Kama and Krodha. It's known by two names. Okay, so he uses both these terms interchangeably, Kama and Krodha. Kama means anger, and Krodha means, Kama means desire or craving, and Krodha means anger. So he talks about this, and basically he begins by saying, Arjuna asks this question, Athakena prayuktoyam papam chariti purushaha, anichanapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. Oh Krishna, why is it that a person commits pap, sinful activity, as if by force, even though he knows that this is sinful, he still commits it? For example, somebody may know that taking drugs is a wrong thing to do. It will harm me if I take drugs. He knows, or even smoking for that matter. Everybody knows, it's given on the packet itself that smoking is, and now they give a big photo also on the packet, right? So it's well known. There's no dispute, there's no debate. It's not a controversial thing to say that smoking is harmful for health. But still, somebody takes the cigarette and smokes. Why? Knowing that it is harmful, you still do it. So Sri Bhagavan responds by saying this. He says, Kama yesha krodha yesha rajoguna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidyeya namiha vairinam. Because of your rajoguna, under the influence of rajoguna, there are three gunas of Prakriti, sattva, rajas, tamas. And the rajoguna, the second one, is the one that pushes a person to crave for enjoying anatma, the matter. Pushes the atma to try to enjoy the anatma. And that is what causes this. And that is called kama. And when the kama is obstructed, when something obstructs that kama, suppose somebody wants to smoke a cigarette. At that time when he's about to light the cigarette and go and smoke, his best friend comes in, "Arey, kya kar raha yaar, tumko ye nuksan karega," he tries to stop him. Then this person will get angry because you're trying to stop. He has been looking forward to smoking for the last half an hour. His mind is craving for it. Finally, he found a break. He's going out. Somebody comes and stops him. Immediately, he'll become angry. Arey, to bakwas mat bol. He goes and smokes. So this is Krodha. Why Kama becomes Krodha, or Kama manifests as Krodha, right? So Sri Bhagavan, technically he says that the Kama, actually Kama Krodha, this Vairi, he covers the Jnana. Okay, now he's trying to answer the question of why is it that a person does pap and why is it that does not experience happiness? Because this Vairi is covering, this Kama Krodha is covering the Jnana of the Jivatma. The Jivatma is pure. It has pure Jnana, but it covers our Jnana. So how does it cover our Jnana? So Sri Bhagavan speaks this shloka. He says, this is the 38th shloka of the 3rd chapter. Dhumena vriyate vannihi Dhumena vriyate vannihi yatha darsho malena cha yatholbena vrito garbaha tatha tenedam avritam. 3 levels at which it covers. The first level is just like the smoke covers a fire. The second level, and this you can think of this circle covering the Jivatma's Jnana, the smoke covering the fire. The second circle is the dust covering a mirror. That's the second level of covering. The third level of covering is equivalent to a womb covering the embryo. So at each level, the Kama's intensity becomes stronger and stronger. When the smoke covering the fire at that level, it is mild. The person is still very conscious of his pure knowledge. There is some Kama which drives him to do some activities to satisfy his desires, but he still knows I am the Jivatma and I should not get too much into it. He's regulated, he's controlled. The second level, dust covering the mirror, he knows it theoretically, but he's not able to really act upon it. He's aware of it theoretically, I know, but still I'm not able to prevent myself from doing this and that. And the third level, he doesn't even know. He's not even willing to accept that there is something called the Jivatma. That's a very high level of calm. And in today's society, we see this. A lot of people, even when you try to tell them that there's some knowledge like this, they are not even receptive to hearing about it, even theoretically appreciating it. Forget about practically applying it, but even theoretically willing to discuss or learn about it, no. It's a bakwas. They just discard it. Right? So because of this, Sri Bhagavan says, we experience ajnana. Ajnana is darkness. Okay, there's confusion, there's misery. And this leads to papa or dukkha, suffering. Okay, so simple causal relationship which leads to suffering begins with karma. Because we have karma, which becomes krodha, we are stuck in this cycle of satisfying that karma and sort of navigating through our krodha all the time, that we end up experiencing a lot of suffering. And our papa leads to our suffering. Now, can we satisfy this craving by karma? He makes it very clear that the craving is something that you cannot satisfy. For example, let us say somebody feels, I'm just using metaphorically. Yeah? Somebody is talking. Okay, now let's say that someone wants to eat some nice food. Okay, he's already had a meal, but then there's a craving to have more. Okay, beyond what is required to satisfy hunger, eats one more item, and then there's still more craving, goes on eating. At some point, the body is not able to accept anymore, then he stops. Okay, now let us say that we say that now this person's craving is satisfied. Does it mean that the karma for that tasty food has been killed, has been destroyed? The answer is no, it has not been destroyed. It has temporarily been blocked, that's all. Again, after a few hours, that food will go down and then the craving comes back. Again, the desire to enjoy that same thing comes back. Okay, so just like I gave the example for the craving for food, you can think of the craving for any item, craving for any kind of enjoyment, whether it is enjoyment through the sight, enjoyment through sex, whatever kind of enjoyment, the craving is never satisfied by trying to fill it. It can never be fulfilled. So Sri Bhagavan, he calls it as Dushpura Anala, Avritam Jnanam Etena Jnanino Nityavairina. This is the 3rd chapter, 39 shloka. Kama Rupena Kaunteya Dushpurena Analena Cha Dushpuraha Analaha. Dushpuraha means that which is difficult to satisfy. Analha means a fire. Fire which is difficult to satisfy. Just like a fire which is burning. Now, you cannot put out a fire by trying to satisfy that fire. The fire is burning, you put some ghee into it, the fire will only burn more brightly. It will not get extinguished, right? So how can you put it off? So you just stop putting anything into the fire, it will die by itself. Okay, so the karma can be only eliminated by not satisfying it. To manage the karma, you have to satisfy it to some extent. Otherwise, it will kill you. We cannot live. But if you go on satisfying it, thinking that by satisfying it, I will be able to remove the disturbance that it's creating, it will never happen. The more you satisfy it, the more stronger it will come back. The stronger and stronger it comes back. That is the nature of karma. So because of this, Sri Bhagavan encourages us to seek out that jnana, seek out that pure knowledge. With the knowledge, knowledge gives us strength. It is knowledge which gives us strength. And through that knowledge, we are able to stave off that karma. We are able to say no to the karma. And when we say no to the karma, we get the strength to overcome it. Okay, so he talks more about that. I'll explain that as we go forward. The first thing to understand here is, where does it reside? Where does this karma and krodha reside in us? So he says in the 34th shloka of the 3rd chapter, Indriyasyendriyasyarthe ragadveshau vyavasthitau tayornavashamagachet tauhi asya paripanthinau. He says, in the objects of the senses. Okay, we have the senses and the senses have their objects. I'll come to that in a moment. And then he says, Indriyani mano buddhihi asyadhisthana muchyate etair vimohayatyeshaha kama rupam durasadam. So he says, the indriyam, the senses, manaha, mind, buddhihi, the intelligence. So the atma is there. Now the immediate covering of the atma can be thought of as the ego, the ahankara, the material ahankara of the atma, the sense of aham, mama, aham and mama, me and mine, material. I am Ajit Kumar. This is my student. This is my wife. This is my son. This is my father. This is all material identity connected with this body. Before I got this body, that identity was not there. After I leave this body also, that identity will not be there. I will be there, but that identity will not be there anymore. So that is called ahankara. Then buddhi. Buddhi is one level outside that. Intelligence. Buddhi means the ability in me to discriminate between right and wrong. That is called buddhi, vivek. Intelligence to discriminate, which tells me that this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. Manaha, mind. Mind is the agency through which my thoughts come. My thoughts appear in the mind and I experience them, I analyze them in the mind using my intelligence, right? Mind. And then beyond the mind, or even more lower to the mind, are the senses. Okay. Now, when I talk about the senses, we should understand these 5 senses I'm going to say. They are not the organs. For example, first is the sense of sight. Chakshurindriyam. Chakshuhu. Chakshuhu refers to the sense of sight, not the eye. Chakshuhu does not refer to the eye. It refers to the sense of sight which resides in the eye. So netram is the organ. Netra golakam. That's the organ through which the sense of sight operates, cognizes. It's called jnanendriyam. It's cognition of sight happens through that, right? And what does it cognize? It cognizes the form or rupam, sight, the object. This is called the sense object or indriya vishayam. In Sanskrit, it's called the indriya vishaya. Indriya vishaya means the object of the sense. The sense cognizes that thing, right? So similarly, we have the sense of sound or shravanendriyam. Shravanendriyam resides in the karana vivaram, in the hollow of the ear, and it cognizes shabda or sound. The third sense is the sense of taste or rasanam, rasanendriyam, and that resides in the jihva, and jihva is the tongue, and rasaha or taste is the object of the rasanendriyam. Similarly, we have the tvagindriyam. Tvagindriyam is the sense of touch, and that sense of touch resides in the charma. Charma refers to the skin in the body. The sense of touch resides in the skin. The skin occupies the whole body. See, unlike the other 3 senses which I just said, they are in localized portions, whereas the sense of touch resides in the entire body, including the ear, in the nose, in the tongue. Everywhere the sense of touch exists, and wherever it exists, the ability to feel touch, sparsha means touch. That ability is there in the body. Similarly, the 5th one is granendriyam, granam. Granendriyam is the sense of smell, and that resides in the nasika, in the nose, and through that gandha. Gandha means the smell is felt. Now Shri Bhagavan says, Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhishthanam uchyate. Indriyasya arthe ragadvesha vyavasthita. So in these places, the kama resides. The kama resides in the sense objects. It resides in the senses. It resides in the mind. It resides in the intelligence. What he means is that it appears in all these places. Actually, kama resides with the jivatma. Because you may now say that once the body dies, all these organs will go away. And similarly, the Atma is not even the mind, intelligence, and so on. The Atma is different from that. So does the Atma not have this kama in it? Actually, the Atma has attached itself to kama. Kama is not there in the pure Atma, pure Jivatma. The Atma has gone and attached itself to this kama. The kama then manifests through these items, through the mind, the intelligence, the senses, the sense organs, and so on. Right? So this is the understanding of how the kama resides, and this gives the base to explain how to overcome it, how to overcome the kama, and that's what we are going to come to soon. So before we go there, one more point that Sri Bhagavan makes is that when we say kama is an enemy, why is it an enemy? In more detail, because it drags the jivatma into samsara. And how does it do that? First he says, Yatato hyapi kaunteya. This is the 60th shloka of the 2nd chapter. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. Even if a person is very sober, sincerely endeavoring, very disciplined, even of such a person, the senses are very powerful and they are capable of dragging that person down into samsara. How do they do that? 2 shlokas later, 62nd shloka onwards, 62nd and 63rd shloka, he says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. Vishaya dhyana. Vishaya dhyana means, Vishaya means the object of the senses, Indriya Vishaya. when we contemplate on the objects of enjoyment, like tasty food, or something beautiful to see, or some beautiful music to hear, delightful music, or sexual pleasure, we contemplate on these things. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate. There is an attachment which develops. Sangha means asakti, attachment to those objects. Sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kamaha. From that attachment, kama manifests itself. Kama is present, but now it shows itself. And that kama then shows as krodha. Kamat krodho jayate. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Kamat krodho vijayate. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. From krodha comes sammoha. So anger, when it goes beyond a certain limit, it causes delusion or confusion. The person's sense of right and wrong starts getting mixed up. He mistakes the right thing for the wrong thing and the wrong thing for the right thing. So he will do something which will get him into trouble at a later point of time. Okay? Like go and pick up a fight with somebody. Do something which need not have been done. As simple as that. That will only give more trouble. It will not solve the problem. Right? So this becomes because of krodha. Krodha destroys the ability to think clearly. If we want to have clear thinking in our life, we should figure out a way by which we never become angry. Even in the worst situation, don't become angry. Maybe under stress, tolerate the stress, but don't become angry. If you become angry, then nothing is achieved because you will only get confused and do the wrong thing, which will make the situation even worse than what it was before. Right? Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Smriti vibhramaha means all the good things we had learned in the past. Okay, the right and wrong has been taught to us. For example, in the Shastra, somebody might have studied the Shastra, Niti Shastra, which tells this is right, that is wrong, that is wrong. But when there is sammoha, sammoha destroys that smriti, memory of all of that. If somebody has not studied the Shastra also, somebody might have been educated in the modern system. You can think of that as the Shastra. In modern system also, a lot of ethical things are taught. Good things are taught. We have had good teachers, right? Everywhere people say this is wrong, don't do it. That is right, do that. But smriti vibhramaha, we forget all of that. Smriti bhramsha. Smriti bhramshat buddhinasho. And this leads to complete loss of intelligence. Intelligence is destroyed. Buddhinashat pranashyati. And the person falls down into samsara. So falling down into samsara means becoming attached to those activities which drag us downwards, which make us do more pap, more and more pap. And in the future, we get a birth which is worse than the birth in which we are currently. In this birth itself, we are suffering in different ways. But we don't follow the correct advice. We do the wrong thing. The result of that is a worse birth in the future than we have even present. And what is the root cause of all this? The root cause of all this is karma. Trace it back to karma. It begins with karma. Because of karma, we get into this fall down cycle. This is a waterfall, like a waterfall. We just fall from one thing to the other thing and get disturbed. That's the point he makes. And this is right in the second chapter of the Bhagavad-gi. So then he points out that still, don't worry. Karma may be a very powerful enemy, but it can be overcome. And that is through the process of niyama, regulation or discipline. By regulating, you can overcome it. So he says, Tasmat tvam indriyanyadau niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam indriyani paranyahuhu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhihi yo buddhev paratastu saha evam buddhehe param buddhva samstabhya atmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabahuhu kamarupam durasadam. He says that this hierarchy must be remembered, that you are the Jivatma. That's the first thing I taught you in the Bhagavad-gita. Keep in mind that you are superior to all of these things. Kama resides in these things. Kama resides in your Indriya Vishaya, it resides in the Indriya, it resides in the Manaha, it resides in the Buddhi. Doesn't matter. But you are superior to all of them. You have the power in you to destroy that Kama which is residing here. Right now, Kama is controlling you and you have surrendered to it. But you have the power to come out of it. Now take my knowledge, take the knowledge I'm giving you, saying that which says that you are powerful. and destroyed by regulation. Says so, by systematically refraining from activities in a disciplined manner and reminding ourselves constantly about this situation, we can overcome karma. He points out. So the Gita is a book which shows us how to overcome this. And the first element here is in the Graha. In the 64th shloka of the second chapter, Raga Dvesha Viyuktaistu Indriyan Vishayascharan Atmavashyaihi Vidheyatma Prasadhamadi Gacchati. He says, with Raga Dvesha Viyuktaistu Indriyan Vishaya Ragadvesha Viyuktaistu Indriyan Vishayascharan. So he says basically that you can engage your senses in the sense objects in a manner that is very regulated. He says, even though I'm saying that karma resides in these things and the sense objects are the places of danger, that is where you become attached and you fall down. But by regulation, by practicing systematic indulgence and withholding, combining the two in a systematic manner, in a planned, disciplined manner, you can overcome karma. And what does it lead to? It leads to prasada. Prasada means happiness or shanti. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hi ashu buddhihi paryavatishtate. So when one experiences that prasada, one experiences prasanna chetaha, a very happy mind. Happiness comes into the mind. One experiences genuine internal happiness, inner happiness. And in that situation, one's buddhi becomes very firm. Buddhi paryavatishtate. Buddhi means the sense of discrimination between right and wrong. So that discrimination develops, which tells us, don't do this. This is wrong. Do this. This is right. So sometimes we have to do something which is difficult to do, uncomfortable to do. For example, you may have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a winter day, and maybe take a bath and do meditation. There's no debate in it that it's uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. But buddhi is strong. When buddhi is strong, you will do it. You will not think it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, but I want to do it because I know it's good for me. There is power inside. There is strength inside. And that is the strength he wants us to develop. The strength by which we are willing to take an uncomfortable activity and do it, knowing that it will give us happiness in the future. It is uncomfortable in the short term, but in the long term, it is full of happiness. It gives us happiness. So this is what Sri Bhagavan later on also says is the quality of Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna is that which is painful, which appears like poison in the beginning, but which is like Amritam, nectar, which is nectarine in the end. That is in Sattva. That is a mode of strength, Sattva Guna. The opposite is true for Rajoguna. Rajoguna is that which looks like pleasure in the beginning, but later on causes regret, later on causes pain, right? So he says this, and he says, a very important shloka, he says, Apuryamanam achala pratishtam. This is a shloka of the second chapter, 70th shloka, and this is something I think all of us should memorize. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapaha pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shantimapnoti na kamakami. He says, just like a ocean which is constantly being flooded by rivers. Rivers are flowing into an ocean from all directions. But the ocean is undisturbed. The ocean's level does not go up or go down. It's just there. Some level it is there. So just like that, if a man in whose mind thoughts are always coming, desires are coming, but the man is undisturbed. He allows the desire to come and it goes away. He doesn't follow that desire. Doesn't go behind it. He doesn't allow himself to get dragged by that desire. He says only such a person, only a person who is like that, who goes by his intelligence and not by the desires which develop in the mind, only such a person will experience happiness, will experience shanti. And I think this shloka, if it is really adopted by us, then we will really taste what that happiness or peace is. If we are able to bring up an intelligence which controls, actually we see, even people without much spiritual knowledge, may not be spiritually pursuing a spiritual goal in their life, trying to realize spirituality, but just trying to achieve success in this material world. You take, for example, anybody, a person who is serious in academics, okay, or a person who is serious in sports, who wants to do well in sports, a person who is serious in, say, in any profession, music, or even business, a businessman, all of them, you'll see they make sacrifices in their life. Each of us also, when we have gone through certain situations in life where we performed well, it has happened because we sacrificed certain short-term pleasures, right? Our intelligence told us that do this later. Let the exam be over. After the exam, you do this. Right now, for the next 3 days, just focus on the exam. At least for 3 days, we applied this principle. We tolerated, we withheld our desires, and then we succeeded. We experienced success. So this is the key to success, where we are able to withhold what immediately is pushing us, what is pulling us, pushing us in different directions, and say that I will satisfy this at a later point of time, that ability. Vihaya kaman yas sarvan pumams charati nispraha nirmamo nirahankaraha sa shantimati gacchati. Such a person who gives up or pushes aside his desires, tolerates them, withholds them, such a person achieves peace of mind. So Indriya Nigrahana is the basis, and this is the one that leads to Kamanasha in the long run. And Kamanasha, destruction of material desires, material cravings, leads to Jnana, awareness of one's true self, and that leads to Prasada or Shanti. Prasada is a word in Sanskrit which also refers to happiness, peace of mind. Happiness and peace are strong correlates of each other. And what happens after that is that a person's, the motivation to do sense control or sense regulation becomes stronger. Once you start experiencing that happiness, then you are even more motivated than before to be regulated because you have experienced it, you have tasted it, right? So this is a reinforcing loop. In systems thinking, this is called a reinforcing loop. It feeds itself. We have to begin somewhere. So you begin by saying, today I will try. I will start disciplining myself. I'll get up at this time. I will do meditation. I will do something else. And as it goes forward, start experiencing the taste of doing that. Once you experience the taste, then nothing has to push you. It doesn't become so uncomfortable. It becomes more natural to accept that thing which you initially thought was uncomfortable. You have converted the discomfort into comfort. Okay, that is the process. So with this very simple process, one can overcome that craving and one can experience eternal happiness. So overcoming karma leads to happiness. And the question that comes is, okay, at the individual level, we talk about overcoming karma, but can an individual do it by themselves? If I tell an individual do this, but nobody else is doing it around them, is it possible to do that? Now, that's a good question because these things work in ecosystems. If there is an ecosystem which is also doing it, where everybody appreciates that, people are supportive, then it's easy to do that. If everybody else is not doing it and only you are trying to do it and everybody is saying, kya kar raha hai? Then people start teasing you, people start making fun of you, then it's not easy to do it. Okay. And that is where the concept of dharma comes. Dharma is established in society. Sri Bhagavan points out, that you follow dharma. By following dharma, the whole society becomes happy, peaceful, ethical, free of misery, very stable. The definition of the word dharma in Mahabharata, dharanat dharmaha ityahuhu, dharmena vidhritaah prajaha, yatsya dharana sanyuktaha sa dharma iti kathyate. Dharanat dharmaha. The word dharma comes from the word dharana. Dharana means what? In Hindi we say dharan karne ki shakti jisme hai. Dharan karna, bear, to sustain. So very good English translation of the word dharma is that which sustains, that which bears. Okay. A very, very, very crude translation is religion. People translate dharma as religion. That's not a good translation of the word dharma. Dharma is, as per this definition in the Mahabharata, is that which sustains. Dharanat dharmaha ityahu. Dharmena vidhritaah prajaah. By following dharma, the whole population becomes sustained. So today we are talking about sustainability, right? And therefore dharma is very relevant for us today. We understand what dharma is and how dharma is designed, then we will learn how to be sustainable as a society. Even this problem of climate change can be overcome if we understand how dharma is practiced. So dharma is righteousness. Righteousness is a better word for dharma in English than religion. Now, in the Gita, there is a contrast between Samanya Dharma and Paradharma. Both are good, but Paradharma or Paradharma is higher than Samanya Dharma. Okay, so what is the difference between them? And in the last class, I left off from here. And now I'll quickly take you through this one and show you the distinction between the two. First, let's understand what the difference is. But even before that, let's understand one very fundamental thing. Karma. Karma, or doing our duty, doing our responsibility, is the foundation of all dharma. Everybody does their respective duties. Okay, that is the foundation for dharma. And there are two options. You can, very broadly speaking, you execute your dharma, be sincere, or don't do it. Avoid dharma. And what happens if you execute dharma? It leads to good outcomes. It enhances your reputation. It gives you a good name. It elevates you in society. It elevates you in your existence. It gives you happiness eventually. It makes you happy. By doing your karma, you become happy. And there are so many shlokas in the Bhagavad-Gita where Sri Bhagavan strongly urges Arjuna that you should not neglect your dharma. You're here in this war. Yes, they are your relatives. A lot of people are going to get killed. Many of your own relatives will get killed. But dharma comes above that. The consideration of dharma is going to cause happiness. He points out that even though they will be killed here, those who are killed also will go to Swargalok. And those who are not killed will enjoy the happiness here. Whichever way it is, because it was acted upon as dharma. This yuddha is a dharma yuddha. Because of that, everybody, whether they are killed or not killed, will achieve happiness in the future. Okay, beautiful logic he gives there. And if you don't do that, if you avoid your dharma, it leads to infamy or disrepute. And that in turn leads to a downfall. And that leads to misery or suffering in the future. And a number of shlokas he also points out. He points out people will criticize you. People will say that you're weak. And you will have to live with that. And that's only suffering. And you will also get pap. Pap means in your next life, you are born in a worse situation. This life you have been made a Kshatriya. You've been given a big position, a status in society. You are the leader of this country. Right? You and your brothers, you are the leaders of this country. But if you don't do your duty now, in the next life, you will be born as some ordinary person. You will not get this status. Okay? Or whatever pap has to come to you will come to you. So what it means for us is today, we are not in the same situation that Arjuna was. It doesn't matter. Whatever situation we are in, whatever duty we do, we should do with a sense of conscientiousness. Conscientiousness means doing duty as duty, the focus on duty instead of thinking, what will I get out of it? Okay, this is my duty. By doing duty, we get the fulfillment of duty. The fact that we have fulfilled our duty is the success itself, not the result which came out of doing that. Right? So focus, sincerity, conscientiousness, responsibility, hard work, sincere work, making sacrifices in the course of doing our duty, and being equanimous. Equanimous means sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labho jaya jaya. Tasmat yuddha yujjasva, he says. Naivam papam avapsyasi. Become equanimous to both success and failure, profit and loss. Don't think, what is in it for me? Doing the duty itself is giving you the best returns. Forget about the result which comes out of doing that. Right? But on the other hand, the people who avoid duty, their mentality would be like this. Fuzziness. They're not sure of what to do. They're ambiguous. They give excuses. Duplicitous. Kapatta. Blaming each other. Playing blame games. Blaming somebody else for your mistakes. Laziness. Trying to avoid work by giving excuses. Making no sacrifices. Looking for comforts. Looking for shortcuts. Looking for cutting corners. And being disturbed. Small things disturb that person. Okay, forget about taking big challenges. Even small things disturb the person so much that he can't do anything. So this is the path taken by people who try to avoid karma and they fall down. So very strongly in the Gita, Sri Bhagavan advises us that follow your karma, focus on your karma, keep your mind focused. Ultimately, karma is conquered by controlling our mind, and karma is the context through which that is done. Controlling of the mind, focusing on karma. If a person's mind is strongly focused on his duty, then there is very less scope for arbitrary desires to carry it here and there, right? Those arbitrary desires are more prone to attack a person who is avoiding their duty than a person who is focused on their duty. So karma is made the basis for all dharma. All dharma resides in karma, and yajna is the process in our Vedic system. Yajna, in its most native form, is in the form of the fire sacrifice, where there is a homakund and there is ghee poured into it and offerings are made to the devas. So Sri Bhagavan explains that this universe, the way it is constructed, is a system of mutual give and take. It's a cycle of mutual sustenance. There are human beings on this bhuloka, and there are devas. The devas are responsible for various functions that happen in this universe. And there is a cycle of give and take. The human beings perform yajna to satisfy the devas. And in return, the devas provide various necessities for the human beings. Okay, this is very elaborately discussed in the Veda. And the Bhagavad-Gita touches upon it in the 3rd chapter, very briefly in the 7 shlokas from the 10th shloka to the 16th shloka. This concept is covered, but Sri Bhagavan doesn't spend more time on it, because this is the means through which Samanya Dharma sustains in society. The yajnas are performed, and all the people in the society, they perform their respective duties to support the yajnas. Everybody does not get indulged, get involved in the fire sacrifices. The Brahmanas perform the yajnas predominantly. The Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, Shudras, they support that process by doing their respective activities. So this eventually leads to a very happy society. And here, the Gita makes a distinction between what is called as the swabhav, the nature of swabhav. He says everybody is not born with the same nature, prakritik swabhav. Swabhav is the nature that we have, the tendencies that we have, which come as a result of our samskaras. Samskaras are impressions left in us owing to our past karma, the karma that we have done in the past life. Over several lifetimes, the samskara builds up. And then eventually when we take a particular birth, like this birth which we are in, each one of us has got certain types of tendencies, called vasanas. So those tendencies, they drive us towards certain types of activities. So you'll see some people very naturally like knowledge, studying. Okay. See, one is that you force a child because you say your career depends on it. So you have to study, you beat the child and you make him study. So even though child doesn't like it, the child studies because the father is beating out of fear of the father, the child studies. But then there are some children, you don't have to beat them. Even if you beat them, they will, and tell them not to study, they want to study because they like books, they want to read more. Right? We see such children also. Right? They're naturally inclined to study. Right? So some people have that tendency naturally in them. Likewise, there are some people who naturally have a tendency to do governance or politics. Okay, politics and governance. Politics has a good side to it also. Politics doesn't mean everything bad about it. It's not a bad thing by itself. The native definition of politics is good administration. Learning how to take decisions for administration, regulation of society, right? Controlling, rewarding the good doer, punishing the bad doers. So some people have a natural tendency for that. Some people have a natural tendency for business, right? So these are very natural tendencies. And Sri Bhagavan says the Varnashrama system, the Varna system is designed on the basis of that. So the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, even though today we don't structure our society like this, indirectly we do, right? We recognize people who are more prone to knowledge and they are encouraged to become professors, teachers, faculty members. We recognize people emerge as good politicians. People emerge as good sportsmen. People emerge as entrepreneurs. So indirectly, this structure exists in society, right? The society which we follow today also, we don't give that term, Brahmana, Vaishya, Shudra. That's perfectly fine, but it exists, right? So whatever it is, this Chaturvarna, the system of the 4 classes sustaining and cooperating with each other exists. And he says that karma should be recognized. So he says, Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha, Paradharmat Swanushtikat. One should do the karma according to their swabhav. What is natural for them, they should do that kind of karma. Then they will be happy. Even if they are not able to do it perfectly, one should still do that only. So, paradharmo bhayavaha, he says, if you try to do somebody else's dharma, then that leads to only a fearful situation. It's bhayavana. It leads to a fearful situation, so don't do it. So swabhav is very important, and that's touched upon in multiple places. In the 18th chapter, in the concluding chapter, where he sums up the whole Gita, he comes back to this point, and he points out what the Brahmanas are supposed to do, the Kshatriyas are supposed to do, Vaishyas are supposed to do. And he says that don't transgress your swabhav. He repeats that again in the 18th chapter. So Samanya Dharma is good. Samanya Dharma actually tells us how we can live happily in this world. But Samanya Dharma is not the best thing for the Jivatma. Because after all, Samanya Dharma is about being in this material existence, or being in this samsara in a happy manner. The samsara that we are existing in is not our most natural existence for the Jivatma. The Jivatma is free from matter. He began with that. He began with the idea that the Jivatma is free from matter. It's not matter. And therefore, being in material existence is not the best means of being happy, even after following Samanya. So therefore, Sri Bhagavan points out that there is a higher dharma called Parodharma, when one looks for liberation from this matter. How much ever we are happy in this material existence, even by following dharma, we still have to take birth in different bodies. After one body, another body. After that body, another body. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Again and again, we have to sleep in the womb of a mother. Shankaracharya says this. So, what is the difference between the two? A majority of our Veda advocates the Samanya Dharma. But the Upanishad portion of the Veda advocates Parodharma. It's called Vedanta. The Veda is a huge body of knowledge, enormous body of knowledge. It's also called Shruti, because it comes through sound. It's heard. It exists as Shruti, sound. Now, majority of it, a large part of it, advocates Samanya Dharma, how we can be happy in this material existence. But a small portion called the Upanishads, they advocate the Parodharma. Samanya Dharma gives us happiness which is called Bhautika Sukha. Happiness which is good, but which is temporary, which is based on punya. But Parodharma gives us Atma Sukha. It helps us to discover our true knowledge, our true self, and experience happiness which is pure, infinite, and eternal. Shri Bhagavan points out that in Samanya Dharma, the buddhi is called Avyavasayatmika, whereas in Parodharma, it is Vyavasayatmika. Means it is one-pointed. It is not irresolute. It is resolute. It has a single focus direction. In Samanya Dharma, we pursue material happiness of different kinds, doing our different duties. But in Parodharma, we look for only one kind of happiness, the happiness of the Atma, and the happiness of being connected with Bhagavan. So Parodharma is also called Yoga. Samanya Dharma keeps us under the three gunas of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, whereas Parodharma takes us beyond the three gunas of Prakriti, Nirguna. It makes us Nirguna, to freedom. That is real freedom. The goal of Samanya Dharma is to seek Punya. Punya means that which gives us happiness in the future. Punya is credit which gives us happiness in the future, and reject Papa. Whereas the goal of Parodharma is to reject Punya also. Avoid both Punya and Papa, and seek Mukti or Bhakti. So therefore, Sri Bhagavan points out that the mentality of Samanya Dharma, even though Samanya Dharma is good and it is sustainability of material society, it is still a miserly mentality. Whereas Parodharma is a broad mentality, or it is broad-minded thinking, it is wholesome thinking. So why is it? It's not easy to understand why this is, because so much importance is given to Samanya Dharma. Why do we say it is miserly mentality? It is simply because it does not address the Atma inside the body. It is still only about the material body and about being happy with the material body, happiness through the body, and not the happiness of the Atma. It is like saying that, like, for example, today we saw a helicopter, right? Helicopters came and they brought the Vice President of India to our campus. Now, suppose I say, let me use the helicopter. Okay, helicopter is a nice vehicle. Let me use now I want to have a helicopter because I want to go to Bistupur and buy something, right? I want to go to Sakchi market and buy something. So you'll say, hey, you want to go to Sakchi and Vishnu, you can walk and go, you can take a cycle and go. Why do you need a helicopter for that? No, I have a helicopter. Why should I not use it? I'll take off from my roof and I'll go land in the shop in Vishnupur. Oh, you're a fool if you're using a helicopter for that. So this is the point. The Atma has the ability to experience Atma Sukha. That is the wealth it has. But it is not using that wealth. Who is a miser? A miser is a person who does not use the wealth he has to create happiness for himself. A rich man, imagine a man who is very rich, who's got crores and crores of money, but he lives in he doesn't wear stone clothes, chappal sab phata hua hai, khana bhi theek se nahi khata hai. Why? If you ask him, क्यों नहीं खा रहे हो यार ठीक से? अरे बहुत खर्च हो जाएगा यार. तुम्हारे पास बहुत पैसा है. अरे पैसा तो सेव करना है ना. कल क्या होगा किसको पता? So the miser is always worried about spending money. He's got a lot of money. He's not a poor man, but he's worried about spending it. He doesn't spend his money. And so he lives a very, very, very ordinary life. And you look at him and say, what is this guy? His neighbor is earning not even 1/10 of his salary, but he is living a comfortable life. Right? So that's the point. Each one of us has Atma Jnana. We are the Jivatma. We have Atma. We have Atma Jnana. We are the Atma. We have Atma Jnana. But we are not using it. We are not using it to experience Atma Sukha, or real happiness. Instead, we are using the body to experience inferior happiness. That is why Samanya Dharma is called a miserly, Kripanaha. Shri Bhagavan says, Kripanaha phala hetavaha. So he urges us to pursue Parodharma. Essentially, Parodharma is yoga or connection with Shri Bhagavan. And he says, Sneha Bikramanashosti Pratyavayona Vidyate. Come on this path, he says in the second chapter, 48th shloka. There is nothing to lose. Even if you don't succeed, don't worry. In the next life, you will continue from this point. Okay, Neha Bikramanashosti Pratyavayona Vidyate. Swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little bit of progress on this path of yoga will give you freedom from the great fear of samsara. Great fear of falling down into samsara. That's just that's the thing to be afraid of. Right? He's pointing out. And that fear will be evaded, or you can protect yourself from that fear by following the path of yoga. So the Bhagavad-gita is all about going beyond Samanya Dharma. Okay? Whereas a lot of other Shastra that we read are about how to perform different kinds of activities to become happy in this world. Whereas Parodharma, the Bhagavad-gita's Parodharma, is about going beyond this and embracing the supreme life. And this is where Karma Yoga comes. Karma Yoga is the first of the three yogas, the three systems of yoga talked about in the Gita: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. And in the first three chapters, the predominant focus is on Karma Yoga. As we go forward, 4th, 5th, and 6th chapter, Sri Bhagavan also touches upon elements of Jnana Yoga. Indirectly here also, in the 3rd chapter, 2nd chapter also, Jnana Yoga is touched upon. And today I will very briefly take you through Karma Yoga. And then in the next session, when we go to chapters 4, 5, and 6, when we review those three chapters, we'll talk about Jnana Yoga a little bit more. So Karma Yoga is centered around 3 pillars, or stands on 3 pillars. The first pillar of Karma Yoga is conscience-driven duty. Duty for the sake of duty, like I already mentioned. Karma is meant to be done in that manner with no desire for the fruits. The fruits of the karma, the result is not the motivator for the karma. Okay? This should not be confused with the question that if I don't think of the fruit, then how will I focus on the work? No, it's not about focusing on the target. You must focus on the target of the work. For example, if you're doing your PhD, like many of you are doing here, or you're doing your MBA, then the deliverable of the PhD, which is a thesis, should be your focus day in and day out. But what he is saying is that you're doing your PhD as a sense of duty. Your duty drives it, not the enjoyment that you think will come after you submit your thesis. That should not be the key driver. Okay, as a matter of duty, now I have taken up this dharma, the dharma of doing my PhD, and I should do it very sincerely, as sincerely as I can. Now, I will eventually get a thesis. Thesis will come. It may be the greatest thesis in the world, or it may be an ordinary thesis. I will do it in the best way possible. but eventually the way it results, I will not get disturbed by that. I will accept what comes as a result of my efforts. Okay, that is karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhur ma te sangostva karmani. If you are able to understand this principle and adopt this dharma, adopt this principle of karma yoga, then the mind becomes very peaceful. Mind becomes extremely peaceful. This is the first pillar. The second pillar is to understand the basis for this thinking is to understand that it is not I who am the doer of my action. This is also a very technical point, how action happens, physical action happens. The Atma is not the doer of anything. Like I earlier said, the Atma does not move. Similarly, the Atma does not cause anything else also to move. Atma neither moves nor causes anything to move. It is the desire which begins and which makes matter move. Right? And there are different agents. So both in the 3rd chapter and in the 18th chapter, Sri Bhagavan says, Adhishthanam tata karta karanam cha pratagvidam vividhascha pratagcheshtaha daivam chaivatra panchamam. There are 5 factors for action. Adhishthanam, the body. Adhishthanam tata karta, the ahankara, the material identity. Karanam cha pratagvidam, the different instruments of action, the karmendriyas. Vividhascha pratak cheshta, the prana which flows in the body, and daivam, the paramatma, the Bhagavan. These 5 factors, they come together and they drive action to happen. So any physical motion that we see, or even our mental action, happens through the agency of these 5. The Atma only has intention or desire or kama, you can say, ichha. Okay, our more native form of kama is ichha. General form is ichha, desire. It could be in the form of good desire or bad desire, whatever it is. So, prakritehe kriyamanani, in the 3rd chapter's 22nd, 27th shloka, prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma karta ahamiti manyate. All the action that we see in this world is performed by prakriti, material nature. But the foolish person, ahankara vimudhatma, person who's got strong ahankara, thinks that I am the doer. I have done this. Okay. So in this way, Sri Bhagavan in several shlokas elaborates, and karma yoga it rests on this understanding. The person who does karma yoga has the understanding that, okay, actually I am just a jivatma. Okay. I am not the doer of action. I have to devote myself with my desire, my conscience says I should do my duty. So even though it appears that I am doing it, actually the agencies are different. So my desire should be focused only on completion of my duty because I am not the doer anyway. And because I am not the doer, whatever result comes, the punya and papa, both are taken away by Bhagavan. The papa is something I desire to avoid. I do my action in such a manner, there will be no papa. Punya will come. But whatever punya comes, I offer it back to Bhagavan. I don't want that punya. In Samanya Dharma, we want the punya. The person who follows Samanya Dharma is looking for punya. Because with the punya, he wants future existence to be better. He wants a better existence for the future. Whereas in Karma Yoga, you reject the punya also. There is a difference between yoga and Samanya Dharma. You reject the punya also. Okay, so he says, Yagyarthat karmanaha anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva vidhyasva vigatajvaraha. Says, give all the karma, the result of all your actions to me. Offer the result of all your action to me, all the punya that you got to me. And by this, you will become completely detached. Detachment is cultivated like this. So for example, now when we do our PhD, we are going to come out with a PhD thesis. Think of this PhD thesis as an offering to Bhagavan. It is not for my enjoyment I'm doing it. I'm doing it as a matter of duty. And at the end of this, doing it sincerely, a good thesis will emerge. High quality papers will come. And they are an offering for Bhagavan, for his pleasure. It's not for me. So if this thinking is developed, parodharma, so this then gives complete peace of mind and the action becomes perfect. It does not lead to any pap. It does not lead to any punya as well. It takes us to a spiritual elevation. That spiritual elevation happens through that. So a question that comes is, how can, this is actually what Arjuna also asks in the beginning of the 3rd chapter. I'm putting it in simple English, karma is material activity, but our goal is mukti or spiritual liberation. So why do any karma at all, even if with detachment? So there seems to be a little bit of a contradiction here, because you told me that I should do karma, but with detachment, because karma is material. I should not be bound by matter. I should become free from matter. I should experience Atma Sukha. But then why engage me in karma at all? Because if I don't do any karma, if I just sit quietly, let's say, because Atma anyway is not doing any action, you already said that. So let me just sit quietly somewhere and not do anything. Why don't you allow me to do that? I've already said I want to leave this battlefield and go away. I don't want to fight. Why not just refrain from karma altogether? So here, Sri Bhagavan, right in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, he says that there are 2 levels. You should realize that you are just a beginner right now. At the beginning level, he says, Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krite, karyatehi avasham karma, sarvaihi prakriti jai gunaihi. Even if you sit quietly, don't think you're not doing anything, because your mind is wandering everywhere. The mind is very much a part of your body, and through your mind, you're actually doing all kinds of action. He says, Karmendriyani sanyamya, this 6th shloka of the 3rd chapter. Karmendriyani sanyamya, ya aste manasa smaranna, atma karmendriyani samyamya, ya aste manasa smaranna, mithyacharaha sa uchyate. It ends with mithyacharaha sa uchyate. One who actually restrains his physical organs, the karmendriyas, the physical organs of action. He restrains them, but he sits and contemplates with his mind on all kinds of activities. Oh, how nice it would have been if I was sitting there in the stadium watching the match. Oh, what happened today? My son went and did this. What would have happened to him? Oh, I could have gone to that party. Oh, it was such a nice experience. 10 years back when I was in college, I was having this. So I'm all the time thinking of all my experiences which happened in the past. I'm thinking of possible things in the future. And I'm sitting quietly thinking that I'm doing karma yoga or I'm doing dhyana yoga. That is called mithyachar. It is false renunciation. So Shri Bhagavan condemns that. Right in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, he condemns that. He says, don't do that. Because you think that you're not doing any action. You think that you are detached, but you are not detached at all. You are very much attached. Your mind is going to all these things. You're only contemplating on them. So instead, he says in the 7th shloka, Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate Arjuna. Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate Arjuna. Karmendriyaihi karma yogam asaktah sa vishishyate. Instead of doing like that, sitting quietly and contemplating on all kinds of things, use your action, use your organs of action and perform karma yoga. With your karmendriyas, do karma yoga, then you are superior. Vishishyate, asaktaha, with detachment. Okay, and this leads us to the advanced stage. By doing this in a disciplined and sincere manner, by doing karma yoga sincerely in a disciplined manner, he says in the 17th shloka, what happens? Yes tu atmarati revasyat, atma triptascha manavaha, atmanyeva cha santushtaha, tasya karyam na vidyate. By doing karma yoga continuously for a sufficiently long time, one develops what is called as Atma Tripti. One starts actually realizing the Atma inside and starts feeling Tripti inside the Atma. One realizes that I really don't need to depend on so many outside things for my happiness. All these external objects, the relationships, the food, sensual pleasures, all kinds of things which I was so dependent upon, I really don't need them. Because now I have realized by regulation, by the practice of yoga, I can clearly see that I don't depend on that for happiness. It's called Atma Tripti. Yastu Atma Tripti Revasyat. Yastu Atma Rati Revasyat. Atma Triptascha Manavaha. Atma Ratihi means attachment to the Atma. One develops attachment to oneself. Atma Ratihi, Atma Triptihi, contentment in the Atma, satisfaction in the Atma. And Atmanyeva cha Santushtaha, full complete happiness inside the Atma itself. Externally, something may be there, may not be there, doesn't matter. Becomes indifferent to that. Yes, such a person, he says, has nothing to do. Only such a person is eligible to sit and do dhyan. At that stage, you can do dhyan. You can stop doing your activity and do that if you want to do that. if you want to do that. Okay. Naiva tasya kritenartho na akriteneha kaschana nachasya sarva bhuteshu kaschit artha vyapashrayah. So such a person has no obligation to do any karma. If he does not do karma, if such a person says, I want to leave the battlefield and go away, that's perfectly fine. But Arjuna, right now, you are not in that position. So you cannot leave your battlefield and go away. So then in the 6th chapter, he points out, Arurukshor Muner Yogam Karma Karana Muchyate. In the beginner stage, when we are in the beginning of the path of yoga, like all of us are now, it says Karma Karana Muchyate. We should do karma. We should do our respective duties with sincerity. We should be fully absorbed. That is the way to control the mind. That is the way to control the mind. Yogharudasya tasyaiva. Yogharudasya tasyaiva shamaha karana muchyate. A person who has already advanced in the path of yoga, for such a person, shama means withdrawing. Withdrawing from this world is said to be the means to control the mind. That is the path for that person. And that is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is after Karma Yoga. When one does Karma Yoga for sufficiently long period of time and develops Atma Tripti, the realization of happiness inside the self, at that point, the person is ready for doing Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga follows Karma Yoga. Okay. So this is about Karma Yoga, and I have now reviewed 4 of the 6 themes that I identified. 6 themes identified in the first 3 chapters, and 4 of them I have reviewed now. I will stop with this for today, and the remaining 2 themes I will review in the next session. And then we will also look at the themes of the next 3 chapters, 4th, 5th, and 6th chapter of the Gita, where there will be overlap between these themes and those themes also. We will look at that also. And then we will take it forward. So I hope that at least some of the thoughts which I shared with you, you could relate with. If you have any questions or comments. We have to, those who are sitting here, I have a Bluetooth mic so that people online can hear you. If you wish to ask any question, please take this mic from me. Those who are online, meantime, you don't have to worry. You can ask your questions straight away. I hope you could hear me clearly.
Yes, sir.
Apeksha, is that your mother with you?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste. It was a nice session.
Thank you, madam. You should speak here in this portion. I'll just switch on the thing.
So as you have said that our sensory organs derive our minds away, but ambition, reputation kind of a thing, they do not come from sensory organ. How it is, we can say it is our not a part of part of desires actually.
Could you hear this question? Could you hear what was asking?
Yes, sir. The question is, where are ambition and where is ambition residing? It's not in the senses. Ambition and fame.
Yes, yes. Good. So you could hear me also. That means good. So yes, in my understanding, ambition begins from the Atma. It manifests through the senses, the sense objects, the mind. It is perceived by us in our mind. It begins from the Atma under the influence of the different gunas. The nature of the ambition depends on the guna which is influencing us most. If it is Rajoguna, for example, it is this kind of material craving for enjoyment. Rajoguna drives the craving for material enjoyment. Sattva guna drives the ambition for knowledge, for detachment. Sattva guna inspires us to become detached. When Sattva guna is influencing us more, then we are not so much interested in material enjoyment. It doesn't drive us so much. What drives us more is the desire to meditate, look for God. God becomes more real for us when we are under Sattva Guna. God becomes less real for us. It becomes imaginary for us when Tamo Guna is acting more on us. Tamo Guna is the Guna which gives us, you can say, ignorance. It takes us more into ignorance, away from our real self. So depending on what Guna influences us, the ambition that emerges from us, actually Ichcha basically emerges from the Jivatma. Ichcha is a part of the Atma. Nyaya philosophy also says that. The Paramatma also has Ichcha. The Atma, the Jivatma also has Ichcha. So ambition is a form of Ichcha.
That means enjoyment depends upon three kinds of guns. One is material lust, or another one is atmic or some kind of reputation lust or ambition.
Exactly. So the ambitions that we experience, different types of ambitions that different people have, are basically influenced by the three gunas that are acting upon them. And in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, this is explained in much more detail. 14th chapter, the 16th chapter, 18th chapter, in the 17th chapter also. Those chapters, they do a lot of analysis of how the three gunas, they influence the way we think and eventually the way we act, because the way we think determines the way we act. Our intentions determine our behavior. And that in turn determines the consequences of our actions, right? Consequences, and then our future existence depends on that.
Yeah, so can't we say this ambition is also a type of calm? Can't we say that?
Yes, very much. Ambition is karma, yes. But the way karma is used here, if you see in the 3rd chapter, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavaha. Because he is responding to Arjuna's question about athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. What is it that drives a person to perform pap even when he knows that it is pap? In response to that, Sri Bhagavan says kama. Kama is rajoguna driven, the kama that he is referring to. But you can use the word kama because after all, it's a Sanskrit word. It can be used in different senses, different meanings, in different contexts. So if you're using kama in a sense which means it's desire to elevate yourself spiritually, it's a sattvic desire, then yes, it's a good thing. Yes. Anjana has a question.
Question is a very fundamental one. My question is a very basic one, but I just wanted to ask. There was a slide where you were mentioning about intelligence and mind, man and buddhi. So I just wanted you to maybe delve a bit deeper on that. What exactly is the difference between both of them, man and buddhi, and are they thoughts and righteousness, or is it something else? Like, or it has something to do with passion. Man is passion.
Okay, the very basic answer to your question is both mind and intelligence, mana and buddhi, are two material elements, two distinct elements of matter, which, for example, Bhagavan lists in the 7th chapter, Bhumi Rapo Analo Vayuhu Kam Mano Buddhi Revacha. 8 forms of matter he lists there, and he says mana and buddhi are 2 of them. Now, the difference between them, mana is the platform through which we experience our thoughts. It's that material element through which we experience our thoughts. The Atma sees its thoughts. Our thoughts are visible in the mind. Okay, just like now the signals, electronic signals are visible on the monitor of this. So the mind is like a monitor which shows us our thoughts. Without the mind, we cannot see our thoughts. Without the mind, without the monitor, you cannot see those characters and you cannot see the content which is stored in your computer, like that. Intelligence is that faculty in us, which is also a material element. that faculty or that engine which helps us to discriminate right from wrong, which tells me that I should do this now, I should not do something else, which helps me to choose the correct answer between multiple options. That is called intelligence. Should I take this path or that path? That faculty of discrimination, which helps me to reason out. So mind works along with the intelligence to guide us in different ways. Or you can say, instead of saying mind works, or we work with the mind, we use our mind, we use our intelligence to take decisions and do different things eventually. Intelligence is the faculty of discrimination.
So in any instance, a very short snippet of any experience, let's say, what comes first? Like the thoughts come first, right? And then we decide, is it a right thing to do or not? Because thought, intention, and then action. So before the action, intelligence comes. So man maybe is the source of what we are taking the action. Repository to act upon, that is the intelligence, buddhi.
I would put it like this. What comes first would be the ichha. The intention comes from the heart, from the Atma. The Atma is the one that desires and experiences its desires in the mind, and then uses its intelligence to decide how to take it forward. So the mind is the platform on which the Atma realizes or cognizes its own desires through its thoughts. How do we become conscious of our desire? Through our mind. We feel our emotions in the mind, right? Our mind makes us aware of what emotions we have. So effectively, the mind is some sense is a reflection of ourself, our nature, our current attachments. They are seen in our mind. And the intelligence is used to choose between this and that. The mind by itself is not able to decide. The mind is just a platform throwing up those thoughts. So what comes first is the intention from the Atma, the desire coming from the Atma. So when the Atma is pure, or when we are pure, when we purify ourselves, then the thoughts which benefit us come, beneficial thoughts will come to us. When we are impure, when we are attached to the wrong things, then harmful thoughts come to us, which take us in the harmful direction. It's as simple as that. And that is why sadhu sangha is advised. That is why, attachment to the sadhus, the saintly people who are actually following the virtuous path. That is why Shastra Jnana or Shastra Adhyayan, studying the Shastra, is advised. If somebody, for example, reads the Bhagavad-gita every day for some time, tries to contemplate on the meanings, even if they don't understand it perfectly, it influences the way the person thinks. Because now the attachment of the Atma has come to something higher, something good. So the Atma's thoughts, intentions will go in that direction. Such thoughts will reflect in the mind. Intelligence also will work in a direction which takes the Atma towards beneficial things. Does it answer your question? Okay. Which slide was that? Is it this one? This is one slide where Man, Buddhi, Ahankar is mentioned. Yeah. No. Yeah. Is it clear?
Just expected there was this self-sustaining cycle of discipline, that you do not fall under karma or growth. No, sir, there was this circle. This systems here. So, not a question. I just want to appreciate it once again. The first step is regulation of sense intelligence. Second is destruction of material desire. Third is awareness of true self. Fourth is pure, infinite, eternal happiness. And all is positively feedbacking each other. Yeah, I don't have any question here. I think it's self-explanatory.
श्रद्धावान लभते ज्ञानम तत्पर संजितेन्द्रिय तत्पर योग संसिद्ध कालेनात्म विंदति. I think through jnana also you can achieve this. You control your.
So it says that by following this path,
You get to learn. I mean.
Learn this thing.
yeah. So in the Karma Yoga chapter, in the third chapter itself, he says that even to begin this path of yoga, one needs the Shraddha, the conviction. Shraddha is the basis. Say Sattvanurupa Sarvasya Shraddha Bhavati Bharata. In 17th chapter, 3rd shloka, he says this. So with the Shraddha, one should follow. Because without conviction, you cannot do anything properly in this world, right? So Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam. So with Shraddha, one practices well. And then one develops that Jnanam. Then Tatparaha means one who is fully devoted. Tatparaha means one who is fully devoted to that thing. Here, Tat means that supreme consciousness. One who is devoted to achieving that supreme consciousness. Tatparaha Sanyatendriyaha, one who has controlled his senses, one who has regulated his senses and brought them under his control. Yes. Kalena Atmani Vindati. In course of time. Kalena means in course of time, he experiences that happiness, that realization of knowledge and the happiness associated with that completely. Kalena Atmani Vindati. Does it answer your question?
Yes, I just.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone online have any questions? Good. So shall we close for today? We have just reached the closing time. I'll do the Antyamangalam and then we will close. Om Swasti Prajabhyav Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Gobhramanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Tad Vishno Paramam Padagum Sada Pashyanti Surayah Divi Vachakshuratatam Tadvipraso Vipanyavo Jagruvagum Sassamindhate Vishnor Yat Paramam Padam Parya Aptya Anantarayaya Sarvastamotiratra Uttamahat Bhavati Sarvasyaptyai Sarvasya Jityai Sarvameva Tena Apnoti Sarvam Jayati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you everyone. Dhanyavadaha. Punar Milamah.